Hello, and welcome to The Black Unconscious,
a mental health podcast about living, coping, and thriving while Black.
I'm Raquel Martin, a PhD candidate in medical and clinical psychology.
And I'm Dr. Justin Hopkins, a licensed clinical psychologist.
This podcast is not meant to be a substitute for a therapeutic relationship with a licensed therapist.
Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome to The Black Unconscious. We are your hosts. I am Raquel Martin.
And I am Dr. Justin Hopkins.
And today we are continuing our relationship series, and we're talking about friendships. Our episode is entitled Friends. How many of us have them? Start with talking about a bunch of different friendships. This takes it back really, really far, but a lot of psychology and sociology and stuff are based off of Greek philosopher like Aristotle, Socrates, all those guys. So back in the really big back in the days, Aristotle, he was a philosopher and a scientist, said that there were three types of friendships: friendships of utility, friendships of pleasure, and then friendships of the good. So utility were the most basic friendships. There's basically business partners, colleagues, schoolmates, and I think a lot of people's friendships of utility can progress into friendships of normalcy or something like that, a higher level. But some people actually have no interest in being friends with their coworkers. They just want to go to work, do their job, get their check, and go home. And then there's also friendships of pleasure, which are relationships where people find each other because of the enjoyment that it brings. So it can be hanging out due to hobbies. You can have somebody you go to spin class all the time. Common interests, if you going to concerts together, or just fishing buddies. You don't have to have every single level of friendship. And then the most important one was the friendship of good. This is a friendship that was based upon respect, appreciation of each other's qualities, and a strong will to aid and assist the other person in recognizing their greatness. Now, I think that we've come much farther in terms of friendships. These I included them because it was interesting, but they're really limiting when it comes down to it, because I feel you can combine most friendships into different aspects, and I think it doesn't allow transition between different ones. Utility, you can have a business partner, but then your business partner can't be a friendship of good because it doesn't help you appreciate the other person's greatness. It's really limiting, but it's interesting to see how it started off with some people thinking, and some people really do abide by this, three different types of friendships: utility, pleasure, and good.
Yeah. I like the different categories. I mean, like you said, though, right? There's bound to be some overlap because people are complicated, and we don't just put other people in boxes or just relationships in boxes. We interact with one another, and then our behaviors and decisions about those people change as the interactions grow. But I do like the idea of highlighting the fact that, one, not all friendships are created equal. There are different levels to friendship and companionship. And that's okay to have people who are assigned to certain types of roles or spaces within your life. Not every friend is going to have access to everything in your life. Not every friend is a best friend forever and ever. Not everyone's going to be a BFF. Sometimes you just have an F, or a friend who's kind of an affiliate, so
not everyone's going to be a BFF. Sometimes it's just going to be an F. That's a soundbite.
A friend?
Yeah, okay, a friend. But to say, I mean, we just came from a relationship series, and then you said some people are just going to be an F. Come on. I'm not the only person who went there. I'm sure somebody else in their mind went there too. But okay.
I'm still lost.
A F? Usually, not everyone's going to be a BFF. Somebody's just going to be it's not
Yeah, for friend, because of BFF.
Right. Okay, whatever. Yeah.
There was context. Right?
I'm just saying.
Not everyone's going to have all three letters.
Not everyone's going to have all three letters. Somebody's just going to be an F, friend. Guys. Some people are just going to be an F.
For friend.
Yeah. That's what we got from that. Okay. So there's that. And then also, not all your friends will get along with each other. I think friends from different walks of life don't always get along with each other. Which was interesting. So, little story. No, that's not appropriate. But yeah, not a lot of people get along with each other from different walks of life.
What were you going to say?
Nothing. There's no need. So I think sometimes people like, okay, so we talk about friends from different walks of life, right? Mm-hmm. So you have like friends that you've had since middle school, elementary school, or whatever for forever. You got like high school friends. You may have friends that you've had for forever, and then you get to college, and if you didn't go to college with your friend, you have like a whole different realm of friendships that are based on a whole different experience in your life, right? Like I met like some of my most salient friends in high school. Then my next group of friends that are most salient relationships I met in undergrad, and then the next most salient group I met during grad school. So I didn't meet them at different walks of life, and I wasn't the same person when I met all of them. So they got to like see me. I would say my friends that I met during like elementary, like 8th grade and high school, got to see me grow the most. As like as going towards being a fully formed individual, but they also got to experience different things with me. Like some people experience parties, some people experience just trying to go to the movies. Like it's very different, and it's hard to expect everyone to get along in that aspect too.
Right. So friends really do have different places in your life. You know, there are those friends that you, as you put it, like you turn up with. Those might be the friendships of pleasure. And then the friendships of utility might just be more transactional, where it's just the business partner. But again, you have friends who you can also do multiple things with as well. Yeah. Part of the reason why we wanted to talk about this is because, to say it plainly, right, perhaps it's all like assumed and understood, but obviously mental health is shaped also by relationships.
Yeah.
Right?
And not just romantic.
Right. Humans are social creatures. We are mammals. We desire to be in relationship with other people. The camaraderie, the companionship, the bonding, all of those things are really, really important. We don't necessarily highlight them explicitly in our everyday life to say, I'm going to go to this particular networking event so that I can gain some friendships of utility, or I'm going to go to this housewarming so that I can gain some friendships of the good. But we are very much driven by and toward relationship and being together with other people. And it's important to have quality relationships in your life so that, one, you're not going through life alone. Loneliness is an incredibly painful feeling, and I think a lot of people do feel it. Sometimes the relationships that we do have are ones that are not as fulfilling as we'd like them to be, or not as satisfying. And it's also possibly to both be in relationship and physically close to other people, but also feel lonely because there are things that you are sharing inside that you don't feel comfortable saying, that you imagine you won't get a very good response if you did share. And so talking about relationship and friendships is an important aspect of us understanding the quality of life that we're living and the various aspects of our mental health that are impacted by that.
Yeah, and so much is shaped by your friends when working with children and adolescents and parents have concerns about their child's friends. You should, because at a certain from a certain extent, given like their school schedules, like they go to school from 7 to 3, and then they may have extracurriculars from 3 to 5, and then they see you from 5 to 8 when they go to bed, and they do that 5 days out the week. They are going to be around their friends more than they're going to be around you. Mm-hmm. You need to watch them. You should be concerned about your child's friends. I think they're a bad influence. Well, they might be, because they're gonna get to a certain aspect where the realm of influence, there are different spheres of influence, and the parent sphere is not going to be as important to them as what their friends think. Mm-hmm. So you do need to be mindful of who your friends who your children spend time with, and who you spend time with, because you friends. Peer pressure is real. As an adult, I have gone out many times just because everyone else is going out, and it's just I didn't want to be the fool a couple of years ago. But now I'm not in the realm of being anybody's turn up friend. I am no one's turn up friend. I do not turn up. Turn up ended in undergrad. I am we will get a nice meal. I've been dying to see this film, or there's a new book. I am not a turn up friend anymore. I used to be. We used to undergrad days. We used to party Friday, Saturday, church on Sunday, but that is not the realm that I'm in. And I'm very aware that some of my friends have turn up friends, and I'm oh, that's what's up. Y'all went to the club. We can go to brunch. Because I'm tired. I don't want to wear heels. It is cold. And that's just not where I am anymore. But it took a lot of nights of me just being peer pressured and feeling bad that I wasn't going out to realize that, you know what, I'm okay with missing this. It's just not enjoyable. So I think it's also important to realize where you stand in the realm of friendship. Don't feel like you have to be forced to go out. Like friends understand, and everyone understands I'm not their turn up friend anymore. I'm too old. I can't do it.
I think understanding is a huge part of friendship, right? You don't get to choose your family. You do get to choose your friend and your spouse, right? And so...
Or we do at least, luckily. Yeah. Like, there's still arranged things that luckily we don't have to do.
Sure, that's a very good point, right? In some cultures, like marriage is arranged and you don't get to choose. But when you do have that choice, you know, it's... I think that people often make the choice based on like just the feeling they get with being with that person, right? And I think understanding is a conduit for those good feelings. When you're with somebody who you feel like really gets you, and that can be a really tricky thing. For example, like when people are going through things that are challenging, right? It's natural to turn to someone in your circle to vent, confide in, to request some sort of support and some conversation around what it is that you're dealing with.
And not be judged by them and not feel judged by them. That's the big point.
Right.
Because there can be a bunch of people who will judge you for it. A friend will just be like, oh, okay. And then what happened? Oh, and then you ended up in jail. Oh, okay, girl. All right.
No, the worst part, I don't know if I would want that though. Like the worst part is when like
some people do not push the envelope. Now that's not my friends. My friends will let me know when I'm a moron before I finish my statement. But that's the kind of friends I need. I don't need someone to agree with me 24/7 because if I did something stupid, I need to know. Like, am I crazy? Yes. That was dumb.
Well, it's definitely a matter of preference, right? Some people may want the tough love or the brute honesty. Other people might want you to finesse it a little bit more. Other people might say like, don't tell me because I'm making this decision anyway. And I just need you to understand why I'm making the decision.
And that's their personality style, right? Because like, as long as it's coming from a place of love, as long as I understand that you are my friend, I mean, most people, like, me and my friends talk to each other terribly. So, like, as long as I understand it's coming from a place of love, I don't really need you to sugarcoat it for me because being direct is so I won't have any ambiguity. I mean, like, I know you said it was a bad decision, but yeah, it was a bad decision. That's it. Mm-hmm. Not like, I just think you could have done better. Like, I don't need them to be my clinician. I have a clinician. Mm-hmm. Like, clinicians can't tell me exactly what to do or when to do it or, like, if that was a bad decision. My friends do.
Well, I do think that, like, if you're genuinely friends with somebody, when someone is, like, struggling with something or someone is having a hard time dealing with something, you're not going to want them to experience that, right? That's natural. When you care about someone, you don't want them to go through things that are bad, right? You're kind of empathizing. You want to protect them or you want to help them. You want to be supportive. You want to pull them out of their bad feeling, right? You want to resolve it or just advise them so that they can resolve it, whatever you got to do to make sure that they aren't feeling bad anymore. And sometimes that is, I think oftentimes it's actually counterproductive. And so I think it depends though. I think it's important for friends to know what their friends need. Like, are you looking for advice? Are you looking to be listened to? Are you looking for me to just be with you as you go through this tough time? Because when people go through things in life, there's very little at times, right? If you, for example, like if you lost a loved one, or if you experience some sort of tragedy, or if there is a breakup, like there's very little as a third person you can do to actually change the situation that is causing their pain, right? You cannot mend a relationship for them. You cannot get them back the job that they lost or the person that they lost, right? You cannot objectively fix those things, but yet and still you may want them to feel better than they do. And sometimes as friends, I think, again, it's important to know whether they need advice or whether they need you to just listen or be with them. But sometimes as friends, I think it can be so helpful to just be there and bear witness, to acknowledge, to understand the person. And so as we choose our friends, I think, again, like oftentimes we do it based on the feelings that we have when we're with them and the way that we feel like they get us and that we can come to them and speak to them. But it does get tricky when, let's say someone is feeling bad about something and that friend doesn't really know what to do, but to try to fix it for you. And that may not be what you're looking for.
Yeah. And I think that may be especially difficult for mental health professionals because, I think sometimes if you have conversation with friends, they may expect you to be coming at it from a clinician's perspective. I am not any of my friends clinicians. I have no interest. And also, like, it's not even possible to be the clinician of a friend. So, like, I also don't, most of my friends have children. I don't offer any advice when it comes to children because you're not my patient and that's not my role. And I honestly, even though it's my job, I really don't like telling people what to do with their children. I really don't. Mm-hmm. Like, if I'm not being seen as a professional in a room, when you come to me for therapy, you're seeing me as the professional in the room, the educated professional. When you're seeing me, when I'm seeing a friend, well, I'm going to tell you how to raise your child. Like, no. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Or how to deal with relationships. Like, as a clinician, I'm not my friend's clinician. Like, I'm not coming at it from that. And I very rarely put on my clinician hat with my friends because that can be annoying. Like, who wants to feel like we don't lecture, but it can come off as lecturing sometimes. Who wants to feel like they're being lectured by their friends? Nobody. Yeah. Like, that's not my role. We've been friends forever. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your child. I'm not going to tell you to do with your husband. It's just like one of my friends, she is very specific about, like, with her married friends and they're like asking for relationship advice. She said, I don't talk to anyone about what to do with their husband because that's not me and I'm not married. Like, she is very firm in this realm. Like, she'll be like, I don't know what to tell you because I don't tell people what to do with their husband. I am not married. I don't understand it and I will not do it. And that's just it. And I feel the same way with dealing with people with their children when they're just like, oh, what do you think? I know you work with this population. I don't know. You should probably ask a mental health clinician. You're one, but I'm not yours. And and it crosses the line. And you don't want to tell people stuff that they don't agree with because then they're going to snap at you. And now you have nobody to go to dinner with. There's no point. So I never do it. Yeah. And it might be, I don't know if it's hard for you when you have friends, especially because you deal with relationships and stuff like that. And they may be thinking this from a clinician perspective, but I've always been very open with being like, I'm not your clinician and I want to be your friend and making sure I don't toe the line with them.
Well, of course I have friends who ask me just general things about relationships and also about their own personal life too. And it's funny. As a mental health clinician, right? The moment I like to do an experiment with this sometimes when I'm in the mood, but the moment you disclose what you do for a living, people often start telling you their stories and their situations.
It's so awful. Never do it at an airport.
It's so in an Uber or a Lyft to your driver, it's like it happens all the time. I actually had a professor who said she joked about whenever she goes to a cocktail party, she considers telling people that she just making up a profession, essentially, like making up like where she works and what she does.
One of my professors told me that he always tells people that he works for the IRS because nobody ever wants to talk to someone who works for the IRS. And he said he learned that early on. He's just like, oh no, I just tell people I work for the IRS. Sure, and nobody wants to talk to him.
Yeah, that happens. But when people do come to me, like when I have friends who are asking me about things regarding relationships, I often do. I just try to listen and acknowledge what they're going through, and then often encourage them to talk to somebody who can help them even further. That it's not me, because
so you're just a friend. You're a friend for them.
Well, I'm only going to get one side of the story too, and like part of being a psychologist is knowing that. Again, like there is more than one truth out there, and all truth is subjective to some degree, and so you only are going to get one side of the story. You'll never hear, the unconscious material that attracted that person to their spouse. You'll never hear the things that they contribute to the dynamic that make it what it is, in all of its unsatisfactory glory. You don't get all of the details that you need when you're just hearing one side. Right, because there are three sides to every story. There's always more than one truth. And so I, as being a friend, my advice would be compromise, because I care about you and I'm only hearing your story. And so there you see the conflict of interest developing right there. So it's always important for people to just be able to, clinicians, I think, to know what their limits are when talking to their friends, and then being able to encourage reaching out to a professional who can be unbiased. I think in terms of talking to friends, though, about relationships, I think that's where it gets really, really tricky with the exact thing that I was talking about. What does the friend need when you're confiding in them about a relationship issue? Because that friend, again, cares about you quite a bit. And so and they're not going to hear the other part of the story, and they just know that they want you to not feel so bad. So you can absolutely set your friends up to not like your partner by only telling them the negative things, by them naturally caring about you and wanting you to not endure what you're enduring. And then that can create a chasm within friendships if that partner who's telling you all these negative things about their partner, that friend rather who's telling you all those negative things about their partner, actually decides to continue the relationship, then the friend doesn't want them to lead a relationship and you don't. And so I think as friends, a good friend has to know what kind of ways to support their friend.
And how their friend receives information. Or like if they're better at receiving advice or possible critiques, or if they're not. Like if you have a friend who's not really good at receiving that and you still want to be friends with them, then it may not be the best advice. Stop giving them critiques then. They're not receiving it well. They're not changing their life because of it. And the only thing they're doing is getting mad at you. Mm-hmm. And it may suck to have to like deal with the repercussions of their actions, like have to pick them up off the floor and deal with that. But you're not their parent. So I'm sure my friends have stood by while I've made countless terrible decisions. And then when I was there complaining about or being upset about it, like they were there to support me. Now, my friends have set limits I do recall them setting limits previously with being like, so we're not about to hear about this person anymore because we told you and you're not listening. So you got 5 minutes, but that's just the way my friends were. And I received that the same way. Cause I was like, you're right. It's probably annoying. Some people may not receive things that way. Like you may feel like that's cutting you off from expressing yourself and stuff like that, but they are still your friends. And when they see you making a ridiculous decision, like a really, really bad decision, and there's only so many times certain people can feel like they can pick you up off the floor before they feel like it's hurting them to see you hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you go into the realm of boundaries, right? Like it is hard. It is really, really hard to be a friend to somebody and to watch them make decisions that lead to them being hurt over and over and over again. And it's something that when you're in that kind of predicament, kind of watching, you both want to be supportive and encourage them so they don't leave you out of their life and their decision making and the challenges that they're going through. But at the same time, it feels terrible watching someone make those decisions and not knowing what to do about it. And you don't want to become callous or apathetic, but you also don't want to continue to watch. And so how do you kind of communicate to establish some boundaries? I mean, I think one good thing is to be able to say to a friend, if you're in that situation, is, I support whatever decision you make, because I do think in friendship, if you're listening to somebody who's going through a hard time or going through anything really, it's important when you're in the role of listener to prioritize what the other person wants, not what you want, right? And this gets tricky because you're close to the person, you want good things for them, but they may not want those good things for themselves. So it's not necessarily about you. It's about that person's desire for themselves. And so being able to draw that kind of boundary and to communicate to your friend to say, hey, I really, really want good things for you. It's really hard for me to watch you go through something as challenging as this and to see you in pain. And because that's so hard for me, I think we're going to have to draw some boundaries around or limit just how much we're going to talk about this particular issue, because then I feel myself getting really frustrated and sad for you and angry about the situation. And that's hard for me. It's really hard to watch you go through this. So, and to see you choose to allow it to continue to happen. And so, I may need for us to just have a fewer amount of times when we're talking about it or getting into it, because I know you are in part kind of choosing to remain in this. That's hard for me. And it's something we'll have to kind of continue to navigate as we go through this. But I'm in need for us to kind of take a break from talking about this to the frequency that we do.
Yeah.
And people have those kind of conversations at times.
Yeah, they're mad awkward though most of the time, so
it is.
It's uncomfortable for both people.
It
but
is.
I feel like we talked about friends that we've had for a while, but like because we're adults, like people make new friends. Like I think for women most of the time it's pretty easy, or maybe it's just for me. Like
you're going to say, how do people make new friends?
Yeah, how do people make new friends?
Yeah. So, and you feel like it's easier for women?
No, actually, it may not be easier for women. I can only speak for me. Like, it's always been easier for me because I'll just talk to people about anything. I think I made a new friend just at spin class because I liked her fro. Or in academia, there's not really that many Black people. So, like, one of my friends, I was like, girl, got one. We're hanging out. You're the only Black person I know. And I need more of that. Like, that's it. Or just talking to random people. I just talk to random people about anything. Just because I'm a real talkative person. And it's also not considered like creepy. Oh no, they might think I'm creepy, but that's not my problem. It's not really considered creepy. I would say more so for females to be like, you want to go to brunch? Oh, I've been hearing about this restaurant. We were going to Caravana, these chicks were at the airport and we were just sitting there for 30 minutes, exchange numbers. They live in Virginia. We talked about hanging out, just meet them at the airport. Like, it's just really easy to just be like, oh, what's your number? I think it's harder for men. Which sucks.
So you do think it's hard for us? Yeah,
because I think most men think it's weird to say, like, do you want to hang out?
I'm not going to disagree with you there. For your cisgender heterosexual guy, it can be harder to open up and be vulnerable and even admit that you like somebody enough who is the same sex that you would like, that you would want to establish a friendship with.
It's not. I don't even think it needs to be that serious, though. Like I said, I hung out with someone just because I thought her hair was cool. Well, that's it's not vulnerable. It's just like, you want to do something? I'm bored. Like, well, I don't think it has to be. But that's also, you know what? That's also my personality. So it's different for everybody's personality, because maybe people may see it as vulnerable.
Well, it's also different based on experience, right? Like you as a woman, it's probably a lot, right? Like it is okay for you to talk to someone about things that they like about them and to not think twice, and it's okay for you to express a desire to be in someone's company, right? Than it is for a guy who is ascribed to these very like rigid ideas of masculinity, where you don't even talk about whether you like the other person or not, or what you like about them, or you just kind of, it either happens organically or it does not. And then some male to male friendships, it can be really stiff and intense around things that are a little bit more vulnerable and revealing about what you like or don't like about the other person. When I spoke with the guys from Let's Talk Bra, it's another podcast hosted by Jeremy Hart, Kier Mack, good guys, both went to my alma mater, Hampton University. And they do this podcast on masculinity, in particular Black masculinity. And I had the chance to chop it up with them some months ago. We did an episode about Black men in therapy. And really what we were talking about is how like a lot of male relationships, male to male friendships, is just all about roasting each other. You call, like, saying, hey man, you ugly is basically just saying hi, it's all about like roasting, picking at, just packing them up, throwing jabs here and there, and that
even
kind
as
of
an
like
adult.
That kind of jostling. I think for some guys it still is, unfortunately. For some guys it still is, but there's this dancing around being intimate and being kind and being compassionate and being warm and being generous and being understanding. There's all this dancing around things that are so normal for humans to experience and understand, just because we are men. And I mean, I've lamented this all the time. Like I hate that is a common male experience, and I'm so happy for guys like Let's Talk Bra and just other people who understand that masculinity is a very large spectrum, And it's okay for men to like be to touch one another, to go as far as, God forbid, like hug one another, touch hands. I mean, all of those things are like taboo for heterosexual,
like shake hands,
heterosexual guys.
What do you mean touch hands?
Yeah, like shake hands, like, you know, like I think there have been a lot of or even just incidentally like touch another man's hand. Like does it have to be a question of one's like sexuality? Like these are all the toxic masculinity assumptions that I think men grow up with, and then it does
what do you mean,
complicate.
Like holding hands? What do you mean? Because like, don't y'all? Guys always do the black man. I call it the black man greeting, where y'all like
the dap.
Slap. Do that? No, like that loud behind slap, and then y'all pull each other in.
It's a dap.
No, a dap is fist to fist.
No, that's a fist bump. That's a pound.
No.
That's a pound.
Look up.
Fist to fist is a pound.
That's a dab. That's a dab. That is.
Raquel.
That is a dab. That's the pounding thing before it got gentrified.
Well,
that was a dab. Or like this is a dab, dapping it up, and I'm putting like fists on top of each other. Like that's a dab. But like when y'all do the thing where y'all like slap each other's hands and y'all bring it in, that's not a dab.
Terminology aside, you were trying to say like, well, what about guys and like touching hands?
Yeah, and I feel like y'all already do.
Yeah, well, we do, but it has to like, I just feel like physical touch between like male friends, and in particular like heterosexual like male friends, it's for some men, and in particular like men of color, because of the rigidity of masculinity, there is a lot of shame and a lot of questioning around whether it is okay or not. And it does make male bonding really challenging. I think there are a lot of men my age in particular who are in relationships with a lot of other men who they would call friends, but it doesn't really feel intimate. And just like little things, like even being able to open up about things that you're struggling with, right? Being able to talk through things that are really hard in your life that you wanna get some support with. Feeling down, like you can. For some male-to-male relationships, it's like you can only feel strong and positive and good, and that is it. And anything else that comes to the fore is just like, this is not a place for us to talk about it because you're coming off as weak to another man. And so I do think that is something that complicates male friendships, and I can understand to some degree why you would say that for some women, building relationships may feel a little less confining.
Yeah, that must be really, I feel like that's one of the, I don't want to say many limits, but I will say this is a limit of being a man, and it must suck. Because I don't think many things suck when it comes to being a man, because like men get held like to like the apex and they get lionized. But like the fact that
male privilege is a thing.
Yeah, not being able to like build like relationship, not being able to, but like having difficulty building relationships with others, like intimate relationships, like friendships, like that must be really difficult, because there's nothing that's more empowering or more like supportive or encouraging to me than like all of my female friends, like my female tribe, because they're just amazing. And it's not even just friends that I talk to every single day. Like one of the biggest reception I got from the podcast were people that I went to Fisk with. And these are people that I don't even see anymore, but just being able to have that combined experience with them helps them to reach out and give me information about the podcast and be supportive about like every single aspect that they see us doing. And just that kind of camaraderie, but just being able to be on like a more deep level of being able to talk about like hopes, wants, dreams, fears, like all that other stuff. Yeah. Like that's I will say it's like one of the best things about being a woman, because we don't have to really worry about that. I don't think I have to worry about that being used against me. And I think it's the best thing in the world, because I'm a firm believer that you're not supposed to be 100% fulfilled in like any specific aspect of life. Like I don't think I'll be 100% fulfilled in like, or it's hard to do this. So like 100% fulfilled in one realm, relationships, work, play, all that. Like I feel like it has to be a balance. I feel like my friendships help to have an amazing balance with my husband. My collegial relationships help me to have a good friendship balance with my friends. Like I'll talk to people at my internship about research and like minority health disparities and stuff like that. But I'm not really talking to my friends about that because, like, one, it probably bores them. I could talk to them about, like, other things about my relationship. I'll talk to my husband about stuff that I talk to my friends about. Like, I feel like there's always supposed to be some kind of balance because it honestly helps to have a sounding board. Like, if I'm going off about something and I really think I'm tripping, I'll go to my friends first. And then I'll, like, bring it back and be an adult and have the conversation with that person. Because that's just how I can't really be, like, in the moment with things. Like, things when it comes to, like, disagreement stuff, like, it takes, like, a moment. So, like, when it comes to resolving issues, like, my friends are such a good sounding board because they understand me, they understand who I am, they're able to tell me, like, where they're coming from and knowing me as a person, knowing the other aspect, and I can approach it with a more sound mind later. But I think you have to have a huge issue of vulnerability to be able to do that. So I feel like it would be just so difficult to not have that. Like, I don't know what I would do without my friends. Like, they're just, and I also keep, like, a smaller circle just because that's just how I am with friendships. So, like, my friends are basically, like, they're just, like, everything to me. So I don't, it would be so hard to not have that aspect of people to be vulnerable with. And I think that's, like, really limiting for men. Like, that just has to be so hard.
It is. And obviously, we always make these caveats, and maybe one day we'll feel like we won't need to. But obviously, it's not like every single man, right? But in general, on average, I imagine, like, most men end up at some point in their life encountering other men who will shame them for being vulnerable, shame them for expressing emotion, shame them for talking about anything other than something that is boastful or brag-worthy, but instead reflects, like, a more fuller scope in life that includes good and bad, triumphs and struggles. So it is, I think it is a phenomenon for a lot of men as they develop their identity is how to be in relationship with other men, and how to be close, and for it not to be about sexuality or gender identity or any of those kind of toxic, ridiculous questions that run through the mind of many men about relating to other men.
So basically, it's very difficult for you. Do you remember last time you made a new friend?
I do. Kind of. It's funny. Like, I've made new friends. I don't necessarily remember how. I think it's kind of hard to remember, like, how you become new friends with people.
But, like, it was recent. So, like, you've been able to build, and it was a guy.
Sure. Well, he also happens to be another psychologist, so that helps.
Yeah. So, like, that's another thing, like, common interests.
That's a good point.
It's like one of the ways, like, psychology.
Yeah, and, like, one of the things that I like about that particular friend is that he does understand absolutely everything that I'm talking about, and has also gone through similar issues, and so my guys from Let's Talk Bro, right? Those are new friends of mine. Like, when I did the guest episode on their show, they've become good friends. And so
y'all went to school together, though.
We did,
but y'all weren't as close.
We weren't friends at Hampton, though.
Oh, okay.
And they were a couple of years behind me.
Okay.
But we were both, the three of us were just kind of lamenting the fact, it's like, wow, like, we have these other relationships with other men, and they don't have the kind of intimacy that I feel like I need at this point in my life as an adult, going through the kind of ups and downs that people go through in life and trying to figure things out, right? Like, if it doesn't feel like there's space to talk about those things, and how unfortunate that is. Like, we the three of us, if I can speak for them for a moment, like, just witnessing, like, female groups, like groups of women who are very much enjoying their friendships, like, take trips together and
say they love each other all the time, like,
absolutely,
like all this stuff.
Absolutely. So there are all these, like, male loneliness is absolutely an epidemic. Men commit suicide way more frequently than women do, and part of that, one of the biggest causes of that is because of loneliness. And I think it has to do with a lot of the things that we're talking about, right? The rigidity of masculinity. Relationships grow from bonding, which inevitably requires some vulnerability. And men are also socialized to resist that kind of vulnerability, which leads to kind of lack in bonding.
I would also think that gets exhausting, though, especially if you're in a relationship, because, I mean, don't you, like, if you're only able to spend like fun times with your mate, I mean, it's like the same thing. I can't imagine working with my husband. It's like I can't even tell you all the stories because you were there. Like you need other avenues. Like you need to be able to spend, like you need guy time. Like I need girl time. So I can only imagine you need guy time, even if it's just to like talk about the game or really just to talk about like how I've been tripping. Like just to talk about like how you need guy time because being around a woman all the time, being around a man all the time, like I'm sure you need a balance. Like it's nothing more rejuvenating than spending time with like your girls, or I'm sure spending time with your guys, or just having that different dynamic in that space. That's why I think different kind of friendships are really important. But in the same vein, there's always the question that I always challenge myself to think about, like, do you think that males and females can be platonic friends?
What do you think?
I don't know. I don't have many male friends. I have 2 male friends, maybe 3, which may be you, but the jury is actually still out on you. So like
is my friendship application still
it's still pending. So like 2.5. But I've known them since undergrad, so I've known them for over a decade.
Yeah.
And then there are people that I can talk to, and then also like the most important thing, there are people that I don't have to worry about there's any inkling of attraction or coming on to me at any time. Like there's no concern there at all. Yeah. Like I think that's the issue that sometimes people come across, and I think it also comes a lot with like exes. Like I think it's probably really hard to be friends with someone that you've seen naked. So I think that would take a lot of people out of the running for some individuals. And I will always say that like at our age, why do we need, like why? You're not building a clubhouse together. Like you don't need new friends. So I think the whole attraction thing, or if you feel like if y'all were like wasted, this is probably a test. If you feel like if y'all were wasted with your male friend or your female friend and something might happen, that's the problem. That's the line. And like with the 2 and only male friends I have, wouldn't be an issue.
Well, can men and women be platonic friends? Like, yes, of course. Right.
If they haven't seen each other naked. That's well, in my opinion is that if they haven't seen each other naked, and then you're understanding like you just like being friends with that person. Like it's never going to go to any other level because there's no desire at all. Whether you were in a relationship with someone, whether you're not in a relationship with someone, whether you guys are not together, it's just never going to be a thing. Yeah.
I mean,
but you also didn't answer the question.
I did.
What did you say?
Men and women can absolutely be platonic friends.
Do you have any caveats to that?
It's not really a caveat, but it's just to say like the boundaries, right? Like the boundaries have to be negotiated and upheld.
Do you feel like you could be friends with an ex?
Me personally,
an ex that you slept with.
Me personally, I don't know. I don't think there's a hardcore rule on any of this. I think some people can uphold certain boundaries in their relationships. Look, life is messy. Relationships are complicated. People co-parent. Families are blended.
Blended families are the hardest families for me to work with in family therapy.
I'm sure.
So like there's things to, there are ways to handle them, but I would say at least 80% would rather not be having to handle them that way, and that's like the biggest issue that makes it hard. Yeah,
I mean, I agree with that, but I guess my point is that like whether you prefer not to or not, the situation is still there, right? Like you may still have a blended family and have to negotiate with your co-parent.
But with friendships, you don't have to do it that way, right? Like you don't have to. So that, I guess that's not a good comparison in my opinion. That was a bad comparison. And with friendships, you don't have to do that. Like so, why? Like like, and then even a bigger scenario. You've been friends with this person, y'all are in a relationship, or y'all slept together, but y'all not in a relationship no more, y'all still friends, and then you get in a relationship with someone else. And if you're in a relationship with that new person, you have to disclose to them that you slept with this person. Like, would you be surprised if the friend was like, oh, well, that's a no. You can't. Yeah. So it's just like, I guess it also depends on what aspect of life you're in. Yeah. Because you may have to let that friend go if the person that you're with isn't comfortable with that. But it may not be an issue for you because you're just like, I'm single. We don't do anything. I'm not really in that space anymore.
I guess I was like asking from the place of I mean, answering the question from a place of, well, there are situations when people have to, but I think it's a good point that you're making. It's like this, when it's strictly choice,
Yeah.
when it's strictly a matter of option, is it feasible for two people to be in a platonic relationship when the relationship was not was not like that at another point in the
and it didn't start that way.
Right.
Like
right.
sometimes people are like, can you be friends with an ex? But it's like, well, I'm gonna be honest with you, bro. I didn't start off as your friend. I started dating you. We went in a relationship and we broke up. We were friends, but we were friends in a relationship. So you're asking me to go somewhere that I was never at with you.
Yeah.
Like we didn't start off as friends.
Yeah.
So like, no, we can't be friends. I was never your friend. I was your girlfriend. It's not the same.
I think it's possible. I just think it's not common because again, like relationships are messy, and that people end up and then people end up like crossing some of those boundaries. So to answer the question, like I think it's possible, but it's going to be hard for people for everyone to kind of uphold the boundaries necessary to just remain friends. Now, again, in those situations where like you have to remain in touch with each other, of course it's going to be better for you all to be able to get along and to respect one another, but that doesn't necessarily mean in situations where there's pure choice and where it's purely keeping in contact because you're choosing to do so and there's an option to not. When that is the case, I would encourage one to just be careful about boundaries and do the self-work, do the self-reflection needed to actually be honest about how you feel about that person and any sort of unconscious fantasies or desires you might have about something else happening. Some people keep people in their life and for reasons that they can't really explain, and they keep it a friendship with an ex for reasons they can't quite.
Yeah, they could be their emotional fluffer.
Yeah, but there's something that they're getting from them, and perhaps even a wish for there to be more of it. So I would just encourage anyone who's in that predicament to just do the self-work necessary to actually uphold those boundaries. I mean, or don't, and just know that there's a high potential for things to get even more messy because you're changing the confines, the initial structure of the relationship.
Yeah, in that same realm, though, like with that, you may have to walk away from a friendship because it doesn't fit in with your life anymore. Like, have you personally ever outgrown a friend? Because this is actually one of the scenarios that I actually have not had yet. Like, luckily, like even with my friends, like getting married or having children, like luckily we were in a realm where we were able to grow together. I think there have been growing pains at times when certain friends weren't as available as others, or like realizing that like we used to, I don't know, see each other every single second of the day in the dorms, and now it takes more effort because we have to make a call or text, which is really hard to do. But we've kind of all accepted the fact that we're busy, and we've kind of grown together. Like there are certain, I don't think any of us talk to each other as much as we would want to, but we also appreciate the fact that we're busy. So when we do talk to each other, we kind of just pick up where we left off. I haven't really had that aspect to outgrow a friend. Yeah. Like, have you ever outgrown?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just about to interrupt, but I think those are some of like the best relationships, the best friendships is when time elapses between the time when you haven't been able to talk as much as you would like, or maybe you kind of touch base here and there. But when you get back together, you pick up like you never left off because there's understanding that sometimes there is increased distance in relationships, or sometimes people are busy. You have other priorities other than just the relationship itself. And so there's understanding and grace around there being you having to split your time or do other things, or there needing to be some time in between you and between you all seeing each other and really being engrossed in the friendship. I do think outgrowing friends is a thing.
Yeah, I do think it's typical. Like we're in like the beginnings. We're older, but we're kind of like the real beginning stages of our life. Like we're not. We're only 29, so it's just like.
And people grow, people change,
and you can't expect everyone to do that with you.
And people grow in different ways. People change in different ways. Like one of the things that you mentioned is when it comes to men in relationships, right? Like if I were to try to make another friend and that particular person does not know how to be in a relationship in ways other than to take jabs and to roast, even though it's in jest and playful. And your kind of question was just like, I mean, does that still happen as an adult? It's like, yeah, there are male relationships that still have that kind of tone because of the level of discomfort that comes with saying things that are simply kind to another man.
Yeah, and you know what? I've seen that, so I don't know why I even asked that.
Like that's why the word toxic, when we're talking about toxic masculinity, is so on point. Because literally there are friendships between men when they don't know how to say things that are kind to the other person. They only know how to say mean things in jest and in fun. And so because saying those nicer things and being kinder make them uncomfortable. And like that is toxic. That is toxic. So if there are people in my life that I know that are old friends from high school or earlier on or even college like that are actually that actually haven't grown to a place where they can be more comfortable with a range of feelings and self-expression, then that's going to be a no for me, dog. Like that's like, you know, you haven't, you know, I've grown personally, professionally. I've changed in many different ways in light of the experiences that I've had. And nor do I think it is a fair expectation for anyone in anyone's life to assume that other people should not change. I think it's wrong to stigmatize change or to pretend like it's unreasonable for people to change or become someone else or be different throughout different phases of their life. I think we need to adapt. Human beings adapt, and we need to grow, and we need to evolve, and we all should be doing that. But yeah, there will be times when we all grow, change, learn, better ourselves, and people do that in a different direction, and then friendships grow apart. It does happen.
Yeah, I think some people address it directly by actually talking to the friend about it, but I think that could be such an uncomfortable conversation. So some people may just, I don't know, let it phase out, like state multiple times you don't want to go to an event. Or I think I've seen friendships outgrow where some people are in different phases of your life. Like they mentioned, like they are more in the partying phase, and like you were in that partying phase with them a couple of years ago, but you're not there anymore. Like it's not really something you enjoy. So like if I had friends who weren't comfortable with the fact that I'm not the turn up friend anymore, they might have phased me out, right? Like just being like, oh, I kind of go to a party and she don't really like to party no more, so I just don't talk to her anymore. Mm-hmm. And like, and that's their prerogative, right? Like if that's the only thing that she felt was the only shared interest, like if you don't feel like you can get anything else out of our relationship, then I mean, by all means, because it's not going to be something that's a part of my life anymore. But luckily, you know, most of us have, like, we've grown together, so we figure like, okay, well, I think there's always a joke with my friends when we do like trips. It's like, all right, well, we'll do this around like 2:00. 2:00 will be like Raquel's nap time. We'll go out and be like partying, because I take a nap on every single trip. Like vacations are girls trips are supposed to be fun, but I also took time off, so I want to sleep. Yeah. So like it's a running joke. Like, all right, well, when is Raquel's nap time gonna be? It's gonna be from 12 to 2. Y'all can do what y'all want. I'm gonna take a nap. But that's something that they understand. Right, yeah, like I'm not, no.
But that's dope, right? To me, that's real friendship, where you know each other's like needs, and you kind of negotiate or are able to like work around it. And you know, there's a mindfulness of the other person based on who they are. And in those and in those friendships, in those kind of friendships, you feel freed up to be your authentic self. You ain't got to pretend like you're somebody who doesn't need a nap.
I think that's also the aspect. Like we're all very comfortable with ourselves just to be like, I am not going out again. It is Saturday night. We went out Friday and Thursday. I'm not doing this anymore. My body can't take it. Yeah. I'm going to recoup for this for like 2 weeks. Sure. Like, no. Yeah. And we're just all comfortable to be like, all right, girl, you ain't got to go. We going. Like, watch Netflix. Like, you know, we get more out of our relationship than just that. Like, it's not just about partying. It's about like our shared interest in each other and our lives and how much we love each other as people that we respect. Like with love comes respect. We respect that that's your choice. As long as you respect that you're going to be in this room by yourself, because we're going out. Like we're not. Right. And I feel like that's the biggest tenet. The same way we were talking about romantic relationships, the tenets of like friendships are the same too, of supportive relationship, being supportive, not being too controlling, feeling like you have shared interests, being able to be vulnerable with a person. That's the same thing about friendships too, because although they're not blood, I do consider my friends my family of choice. You have your family of origin, which are like my parents, my aunts, my cousins, my uncles, but my friends are my family of choice because they are that much their family for me. Like I wasn't born into this family, but I choose you to be my family, and that's really important to me. So we have to respect each other. Yeah. Or because it's family of choice, I'm gonna choose not to be friends with you.
Yeah. I think right. Like one of the really big hallmarks of positive relationships are, like you said, that mutual respect. Right. There's understanding of what people need and who people are, and there's a mutual respect for those things. There's also space for people to be authentic in who they actually are. They don't have to pretend to be someone they're not. They can, and again, within reason, because we'll all do things at some point that aggravate, annoy, or step on the toe of other people because we're imperfect and people are different. And so sometimes at some point there'll be something that you disagree about, and that's what real relationships entail. There are times when you're in sync and things are amazing and you're having a lot of fun. And then hopefully, good relationships, there'll be those few times in between where you have a rough patch and you have those disagreements. But in good relationships, you're able to still respect one another during those disagreements, try to understand one another, and you're still able to be authentic in who you are and not have to pretend to be someone else.
Yeah, and I will say the same thing I said something about like relationships where it's just like you have to, like, things you have to understand in romantic relationships about like how people manage being upset. I feel like that's important in friendships too, because no one wants to feel forced to like work on something in a certain span of time, or no one wants to feel forced to talk when they don't want to talk, or no one wants to feel forced to not talk when they want to talk. Basically. So it's like if you want to talk about it and they don't, it's like it's hard, right? It's hard because you both want something out of it. Right. So you kind of just you got to find a happy medium. But with everything, it takes time. Like romantic relationships, I'm sure there are multiple arguments before they realize like, oh, you need a minute. So I think everything just takes time. So like romantic relationships, we had this sociology experiment where we had to describe the differences between a romantic relationship and a friendship. And when it came down to it, the only difference was just intercourse. And it wasn't even like physical touch, because within female relationships, we were talking about hugging and stuff like that. But when you brought down the tenets of like what you got out of a friendship and got out of a romantic relationship, just breaking it down, the only difference was intercourse. Like you were talking about support, like when we were using all the same like words and like statements, and the only difference was that, because you get the same thing out of it. So like it seems like honestly most of the stuff we're saying for friendships are similar to what we're saying about romantic relationships. Like you're really getting most of the same thing out of it. Like I consider my husband to be one of my best friends, and we're friends, but he's also my husband. And like if you took out that aspect of it, like that physical aspect of it, it would be the same thing as how I describe like one of my best friends. Like it would be the same exact thing. Yeah. So romantic relationships and friendships come out the same way. And it's a really good experiment we're just describing certain concepts within our culture without stating the name of what it was and seeing if people could guess it. But when we did romantic relationships and friendships, they were the same exact thing except for one point.
The sex.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
And not for everyone, actually, because some people's friendships were like that as well. So I was like, all right.
Well, and then there's not just physical intimacy, but do you think there is also an emotional intimacy, a level of emotional intimacy that is reserved only for romantic relationships? Because I think that could be.
I don't think so.
I think it depends on the person.
It probably depends on the person, but for me, I don't really think so. I think my husband once commented that I talked to my friends about everything. Yeah. To the point where he was just like, you need to just leave some stuff to yourself. And that's just not me. Because it's not like I have like a ridiculously huge group of friends. All my friends we're close, we're intimate.
So case in point, your husband is a little bit different on that, right?
Yeah, like he's very different on that. He's had the same friends since he was younger. Like he's had the same group of friends. When we got married, he did not have groomsmen. All of his friends were his best men. There was not one best man. They're all best men. So they're all like a very close, tight-knit group. They've grown with each other since they were younger. Yeah. So like they've got to see each other through college, through high school, through like breakups, makeups, children. Like they've grown together as a people. And I think they're very, very close. He calls them all his best friends. But the way I talk to my friends, like the intimacy level of stuff like that is different than he talks to his friends. But they're still his best friends.
Yeah.
It's just like when he hears me talking to my friends, like they don't need to know all that. And I'm like, I mean, says you.
Yeah.
You know?
Right,
so like
right.
his best friends are his best friends. They talk about this. My best friends are my best friends. We talk about everything. Yeah. And I think like most females are like that, honestly. Like we really do just talk about everything. Not a lot of stuff is off limits.
I think on the average for for again, like heterosexual cisgender men, we have more issues with intimacy in relationships on average than our heterosexual cisgender like female partners.
I've actually noticed a cultural difference with that though.
I have too.
Like with and I don't know many white males, but the white males that I did know was through academia, and like their relationship with their friends are like,
I have too.
They're like pretty close. Like,
yeah, well,
they also joke around differently than I see black men joke around, because I've seen white guys call each other bitch, and I've never seen a black guy do that unless they're about to fight. So that like was one time when I saw that and I like actually physically gasped, like, oh my God, they're about to fight. And I was just like, oh Jesus, I can't be around this.
There's the parameters of masculinity are way more rigid for men of color.
Yeah. And that's because there are a bunch of limits that were placed on you from birth. That goes back to like we're talking about display rules. Like that's what was put on you.
Right.
It's not your fault.
Right. Like not to get too far into it, but like African American identity is the created identity through oppression. Right. And so men in particular, black men, have been our experience, the genesis of our culture is in emasculation.
Yeah, and that's why it's such a big deal not to disrespect y'all. Like it can cost you your life. Like it's the reason why some men are in jail. It's like, you disrespected me, so I murdered him. It's like, Jesus. But like when you're based in a culture where everything was taken away from you. Yeah. Your child was taken away from you to go somewhere else. Your wife was taken away from you, if not physically, emotionally, because somebody else had their way with her. And all you had was your respect, and that was taken away from you. Yeah, and then you get to a point where slavery is over. You still got civil rights. And you still have this, and this is all you have. Right. Don't disrespect black men. Well, like it's dangerous. In my opinion, that's the most dangerous thing. Well, do not disrespect them.
Well, like what you just said, right? Like then, like if you don't. Like some people will absolutely discount the effects of our genesis in this country as being part of something we experience now because it's 400 years later, right?
And they can't, because it's science. Epigenetics is out there.
Absolutely,
there's published
science,
articles.
Right?
It's not a thing.
We know we'll probably end up talking about this more in the future, but we know there are longitudinal studies that show that the effects of the Holocaust are passed down. And
just same way with the Native population in America and the Trail of Tears, and that's passed down to them. Right.
But not to mention, right? There are layers of oppression that just keep changing, right? Like so there's slavery, Jim Crow, the civil rights fight, like there's
systemic racism, the prison system.
I mean, so it's not like it's been completely removed,
it's just been given a different name.
Right. So of course these things are still problematic for a lot of men of color. And I think absolutely, yes, white men have a little bit more freedom, have a lot of it rather, freedom of expression in their masculinity than men of color do, and I think it has a lot to do with our experience in this country.
Well, and they have more freedom, period, though, right?
That is also
like true. It's just you start off with more freedom. But
one of the things I did want to ask you though,
I did only do the questions today.
What's that?
I did only like hurl questions at you today. Yes.
Yeah. You only had a few. I'm trying to remember what it is now, but you were talking earlier just a little bit about like respecting each other's boundaries in relationships, making sure that you're not disrespecting your partner. Yeah. We even talked about some of these more positive signs about being in friendships. That's what it was. So you were talking about like how you navigate like disagreements like among friends. Yeah. So one of the things in relationships, right, where couples relationships or friendships, and you were talking about how even those are similar too, right? Big problems.
I'm sorry. I'm just gonna laugh because I'm just gonna put this on the air. Justin and I had a disagreement.
We did.
Right? And I feel like What's the question, Justin?
The question, well, it doesn't really relate to our disagreement that we had earlier. You was about to slide some shit
I wasn't.
All
right.
But
that's more something I would do. But yeah.
But it is. Maybe you were feeling guilty about that.
I think I was, because I did say some shady shit. But
she gave me a side eye earlier.
Yeah.
We were talking about.
Because everybody has disagreements, guys.
Yes. So one of the things that I've learned. All right. So now we're here. We're here now. So one of the things that I've learned is when about myself is when I have a disagreement, like I really want to work on resolving it. And
yes,
not to the point.
And that was part of the disagreement.
Yeah. Not to the point
he wants to have a conversation, and I'm like, I don't want to have a conversation about this anymore.
And not to the point where you agree, because people are not going to agree, but just where there's understanding about why there is disagreement, and not everyone's going to want to do that, right?
Yeah, but it's also the fact that like it has to be okay. So it's understanding why there was a disagreement, but it's like I feel like you want to get to a point where like everything is okay.
I do,
and that's not always going to be the case.
It's not,
because when I have a disagreement, I need a minute. So like it's not just like the understanding. It's like the understanding, and you also want to be like, okay, everything's fine now, Justin. Let's just like go into it. I'm just like, everything's not fine, but like we're gonna be. So it's just like,
yeah.
It's just like I think we just manage it differently. So it's not just understanding. You also want everything to be 100% resolved.
That's accurate.
Which is not going to be the case for everybody.
Which is not reasonable.
Well, it could be reasonable if the person that you have disagreement with sees things the same way. Like sees like the goal of the conversation the same way. But I don't see it that way though. Like I see like as long as like both of our perspectives are told, then like that's all I can really ask.
Yeah.
So like we may resolve it later. But if you're having a disagreement with someone who's just like, yes, I want it to be understood, but I also want it to be done by the end of the conversation, then it very well may be possible. Yeah. Because that's the goal for both of you.
Yeah.
But that's not the goal. That's not the goal for me.
That's probably true. But I also think in each disagreement, we talked about this a little bit, in our intimate partner relationship series when we talked about disagreements. And again, a lot of these things apply to friendships as well. Like I do think there is always a someone who distances and someone who wants to pursue, right? Someone who wants to like dive in and like fix it, the pursuer, like who's like nagging, like you need to fix this now.
That's you.
And then that's me. And then there's the distancer who's just like, listen, I'm not trying to like deal with this. So
no, it's not always not trying to deal with it
right now.
I'm not trying to deal with this right now.
Right. Okay, like, right now. That's like, and that's important context. Yeah. So right. So what do you do in friendships? Like not even. I'm just talking about like in general. In friendships, relationships. What do you do when people's needs are diametrically opposed? That's hard. And that's when there is, that's when there can be like bitter disagreement and argument, and also where things can start to break down. But how do people then work their way around to negotiating? That's the tough piece, because there are going to be times when your needs are diametrically opposed from the other person.
I think it's different. So like I think it depends on what's the most important. So I think like it depends on how much you know about the person. Like, so with us, I like when me and you disagree, I feel like it's going to take, we just started the podcast. So like, and this is just us being transparent about the fact that this is new and we're still like working together, and like it was disagreement for like 2 seconds and it's over now. But like everybody has these issues. Like we're both mental health clinicians, and I'm just like, nope, I'm not really trying to talk about this. So I'm not doing any kind of therapeutic aspect because I just don't want to talk about it. And these are two like trained professionals, but you can also still like, nobody ended up throwing chairs or like stabbing each other. You're just like, this is just not what's happening. Sure. I think it depends on also who's willing to give up a little bit of space in that aspect, because like I think I shared before, like when I used to get upset on some real immature shit, and I didn't think it was immature at the time, but now I realize it is. Like if one of the few times me and my husband had disagreements, this is before we were married, that I'll just be like, all right, so it's Monday, I'm gonna see you on Thursday or something like that. Like just ridiculous, just the dumb, like that's just, it's just absurd. It's just absurd. Like now that I think about it, but I was coming from a place like, I'm not gonna argue. I don't really know how to manage this without arguing, so I'm just gonna remove myself. So I thought I was doing something well, but I wasn't. So it wasn't until he said like, that's a no, don't like this, stop doing it, that I was just like, okay, well, I'll just fix it then. But that's just, one, he had to voice the fact that it was annoying him. Two, it annoyed him multiple times before he actually said it annoyed him. So like there's still that fact that like closed mouths don't get fed. I didn't really think it was an issue. But 3, I also had to take it within myself to just be like, okay, well, I need to be an adult about this, and then just figure out ways to address it without shouting, yelling, acting like a child. Because to me, it was more so I was distancing myself because I didn't really know how to approach it from an adult perspective, like not being a bud, not screaming, not yelling. And we also had so few arguments that when they did come, I was like, what the what? I don't know how to like, it just never happened. It was so rare that I just didn't know how to handle it well. Mm-hmm. So it was up to him to approach me about it, and for me to decide that like, I'm not going to really fight you on this. If this is something that you don't like, then I'm just going to change it. Mm-hmm. But even with that, multiple times like kept doing that before he was just like, I'm going to say something about it. So closed mouths don't really get fed. You kind of have to share the fact that this is something that's different. I think most of the time if my friends don't receive stuff a certain way, I'm just going to drop it because it's not worth it. And I'm not going to change them. Like I'm just not. So if you don't receive stuff a certain way, you don't receive stuff a certain way.
Yeah. You know, I'm the kind of person that just really believes like in every single relationship interaction, there's something that is co-created. Maybe not in that particular moment always, but there are interactions that you have that co-create beforehand, that co-create the situation that you're dealing with in that particular moment. To say that more clearly, there are experiences that you have beforehand that can co-create the moment in the present time. So all that to say, like, no one is perfect, and no one is without flaw, and everyone can make mistakes. I think when it comes to like resolving disagreements, it's so helpful for people to just start with that. Like no one is great. Like there's some inherent grace in that, right? Like no one is blameless, and no one is completely blameworthy. But disagreements happen, and people do and say things at times that perpetuate disagreements. And so for that point forward, it's just about like negotiating and trying to understand the other person. And when you have friends that are willing to do that, conflicts can be resolved and disagreements can be mended.
Yeah, and then if the friend isn't willing to do it, then if you're concerned, like they may not want to talk about it. And it's just going to be that difficult to approach it. And there's some aspect of fear with it within a certain context, because nobody really wants to have a confrontation anyway. And it doesn't have to be like confrontation like fisticuffs or something. So a lot of people just don't want to have disagreements. So there's a healthy amount of like concern or apprehension with having to approach someone about that. But
yeah. Well, I think also, right, it's gotta be one of those things again that you negotiate, because again, right, in the distancer pursuer kind of style, like you're gonna need, like, that person may need time. So like for me, I know that I want to like resolve things, I want to like talk about it, but you also got to give people time and space to do that.
Yeah, it's too much pressure, man.
Yeah. that can happen.
It's just too much. Everything is a therapeutic intervention. Jesus. It's so hard. I always wanted to know about people's relationships when they're with clinicians, because I'm like, it's rough, ain't it? You got to talk about everything. It must be exhausting.
No stone unturned.
Yeah, it's so annoying, I'm sure. But I can only imagine it must be annoying for my husband sometimes. Like, we need to process this because this can come up later in our relationship or when you have children. So if we don't process this now, we're gonna doom our children to a life of no love. And it's like, what? What?
I don't think it's quite that.
Not everybody escalates that
concrete.
quickly, but sometimes it's fun to just like freak them out. Like sometimes I'll just say crazy shit to be like, this is going to negatively affect the developmental mindset of our children. We don't even have children.
Is this how you get Brandon to talk about things he doesn't want to talk about when he's the distancer?
No, my husband, it's not possible to force him to do anything he doesn't want to do. It's not a relationship. Okay, so I feel like that's everything.
Should we wrap
friendships, wrap up? I think next week is going to be about family relationships. Mm-hmm. I think we should name it after another song. Or we can name it This Is Family Business, because that's one of my favorite Kanye songs.
Oh, the old Kanye.
Yeah.
Man.
He's gone now.
He is definitely
He's trying
gone.
to come back, but I don't trust his ass.
Ooh, he is, no.
I don't. You could donate all the money you want. We need your mindset to change.
Barbecue invitation revoked. Yeah, indefinitely.
But yeah, Got distracted. Okay. Thanks for tuning in, guys. As always, check us out anywhere you can find a podcast, iTunes, Spotify. We're on iHeartRadio now, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those good places.
Radiotopia, TuneIn, all those great places, Google Play. And head to our website, head to our Instagram, The Black Unconscious, both times.
I already said that.
Oh, did you?
Bye.
My bad. Peace, guys.